You've just ended playing the show. How was it? How was the crowd?
It was great. Yeah, it was really good. It's always good here. We played here before, and this is our second time playing here at this particular venue. And both times it's been great. It's been a really good crowd reaction, crowd response, overall just good sound outside. And I think it's a really, really good place. I like coming to Poland. The fans here are awesome. So.
Yeah, you've been there for a few times, I think. 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So, you were the original vocalist for Death, back when it was still Mantas.
Yep.
Looking back, did you realize you were helping to shape an entirely new genre?
No, not at the time. It's surreal now to think how many years later it's been and what we did and how we started and to see that it's become what it is. It's sometimes a little annoying because some people recognize my influence but overall, worldwide, it's not that recognized. So it's a little hurtful. Sometimes you're thinking, you put 40 years into something and you're just kind of like known. But I guess that's the spirit of the underground, to be, kind of like in the underground, but not really world known.
How do you recall Chuck Shardiner during those early years? Why did you leave the band then?
I mean, we were kids, so it's kind of really like, I only knew him as a teenager. Can't really expand on him as an adult. I can only tell you that, we were teenagers, we were, 15, 16-year-olds, just having fun playing music, in the garage. Never thought it was going to become what it did, what it's become.
Yeah, and why you left Death?
Why did I leave Death? He kicked me out because I tried to get him to go with a girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Many consider your early demos with Death as the birthplace of death growling. How these vocals which you create came to your mind? It was something.
Well, I mean, in Death and Mantis, when we started in Death, I basically just started kind of mimicking a lot of what we were taking influences from, which was a lot of stuff during that time frame. Everything was all coming. We were tape trading, for one. I was a tape trader, so I was getting a lot of stuff from all over the place. So you get tapes from like Possessed, of course, was a big influence. There was stuff from Sacrifice coming out of Canada. There was stuff from Paul Speckman coming out of Chicago. Then there was stuff overseas like early Hellhammer. There was stuff like Venom was a big influence on Mantis in the beginning. So it was kind of like a combination of trying to like combine all that stuff. Plus being underage and 16, you're just kind of screaming and you have all this angst and anger. And I come from the punk world, so I just wanted to kind of like express it that way. Plus I was playing drums at the same time. So it was a lot of like trying to do that. But then when I found the growl, it really wasn't until Massacre that I changed it, because earlier prior to that was more screechy type vocals, and Chuck started to sing as well, and he took it more of his influence from Jeff Becerra and was trying to sound more like Jeff, where I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sound like somebody else. So I tried to come up with my own thing. And I thought, what was the most primal thing that I could think of? Something that was, a lot of people will always say, oh, well, there was demonic movies like The Exorcist or stuff like that. But to me, it was more or less about being primal, being natural. And to me, the most natural thing that was hair-raising is I was raised around a lot of large dogs, like Rottweilers and Pit Bulls. And I knew the scariest thing that I ever felt as a 14-year-old was being between Rottweiler, like 4 or 5 Rottweilers during feeding time, where you had to go out and give them food. And if you've ever been around large dogs, when you bring out a bowl of food, they all begin to growl, this low growl, because one wants to be the alpha, wants to be dominant. And it's kind of hair-raising. And I thought, that's what I want to do with vocals. I want to do something that's hair-raising. I want to do something that sounds primal, sounds raw, sounds natural. And I started to mimic dogs. That's literally how I got the growl.
So you can say that in that time you didn't know anyone who was doing that kind of vocals?
No, not the growling. I mean, like I said, there was stuff like, I took phonetic enunciation influences from Tom G. Warrior, only because I heard the Hellhammer demo and I really liked how he phonetically spoke, even though at the time I didn't realize it was because he was from Switzerland and English wasn't his natural language. I just liked the way that he phonetically said things. So I took that, and there's a lot of his nuances, like his little ooh and his hey, and I just took that and I expanded it, you know, instead of just going hey, I went hey, you know, I kind of like brought it out more. So there was that influence, and just the general influence of everything coming out in that late 80s time. You know, like I said, Venom, everything from Venom to Lemmy, from Motorhead to just anything that was really raspy and raw, I was attracted to. So I tried to kind of take all of those influences all together and put them all together.
So what was the reaction of your friends, like Chuck and others, when they first time hear your growls? Because it was something new for everybody.
Yeah, every Chuck and I and Freddie at the time, we knew we were doing something that was completely different, and everybody hated it. Everybody hated it. I remember people would say, this is shit, this will never last, this will never catch on, this is garbage, this will never go. And look, 40-something years later, it's one of the biggest influential music and metal today. But we knew we were doing something. We didn't realize we were doing something that was going to have this much impact, but we knew at the time we were doing something different, because everything that was popular at the time was hair metal, everything like Motley Crue and that kind of stuff. And we just wanted to be the completely polar opposite of that. So we just gravitated to more underground music, and that's literally, we did our own thing. My influences, especially lyrically, came from horror movies, because I'm a big horror movie fan, so I loved the early, like the Lucio Fulci films and stuff like that. I was taking, and Chuck too, because I mean, a lot of the stuff on Scream Bloody Gore literally comes from our love of Lucio Fulci and Evil Dead and all those 80s films that just came out during that time frame.
So when you think about growl vocals, which other vocalists do you think they are really great?
Well, I mean, to me, that impressed me. Like I said, Paul Speckman was really cool, because I heard the Death Strike demo. I liked what Paul was doing. Jeff Becerra, of course, doesn't have a growl. He was more of a screech, so that was always interesting. That I liked Jeff's screeching vocals. There were other vocals, like there was a lot of stuff like German thrash that had not so much death metal vocals, but had this really intense rough vocals, everything from early Sodom to Creator when they were called Tormentor, to early Destruction, even though Schmier now kind of does more of a singing type style. Back then on that raw stuff like Sentence of Death was just so raw, and just so, the first time you heard that was just mind-blowing.
Okay, back to the Death. When you left the band, sometimes later they record their debut album Scream Bloody Gore, with Chris Rayford on drums and Chuck on vocals and guitars. But many of these songs you were creating, I think, and playing. So how do you see this album listening to the other guys singing and playing drums?
I don't really listen to it that much. So, I mean, I remember when it came out and I was like, okay, you know, I gave it a listen. And, you know, I do like Chris's style. I like what Chris did. You know, I remember before Chris, there was Eric was in there. He was the drummer before. He was like the drummer right after me. So Eric was there for a little bit. And then Chris just took it and made it his own. And I like the fact that Chris made it his own. And it's still to this day, Chris has a very unique style of playing and singing. Of course, I like Autopsy more than his work in Death, because I really felt that he found his own niche with Autopsy. And I've always loved the first two Autopsy albums, Severed Survival and the Mental, damn it, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but the first two Autopsies are just amazing to me. So it was okay, because, you know, you're back then, but you know, anytime anybody leaves a band and the band gets famous, you're gonna be a little, I wouldn't say bitter, but you're gonna be a little bit of like, damn it, you know, what was it? I can't believe that we had an argument over a girl, you know, simple as that. But you know, we're young, you're teenagers, and nobody gets along. I mean, you've got marriages that fail, bands that fail. This band right now doesn't have the original members. That's just life. That's how it is. People click at first, and then people have agendas, and those agendas don't work, and people split up.
So do you think the Scream Bloody Gore would sound different if you will be still in the band?
Yeah, most likely it probably would have sounded different. For one, I never did any double bass drumming. So it was good that And Chuck has always been a person whenever you see every single Death album has different members, because he was always pushing himself forward as a musician, always trying to achieve a better goal, and he would gravitate towards musicians that would fit what he was trying to do. So Scream Bloody Gore is raw. The demos before that are even more raw, the demos that I played on. So you get this, you see this transition happen in Death till it gets to the point where, to me, after Spiritual Healing, it definitely wasn't death metal anymore. To me personally, it became more of a prog type of metal band, but that's the direction he wanted to go in, and he was always growing as a musician.
In recent years, there has been a major revival of OSDM. Do you listen to young bands which are? There
are some younger bands that I listen to. I wouldn't say younger, because a lot of the bands, I would say newer bands, because a lot of the newer bands have guys that are my age or just a little bit, maybe 10 years younger than me. They're in their 30s or 40s. I'm in my 50s, so there is this really cool, and there's some that I like, and then there's some that just kind of, they have some parts that are good, but it seems like they're just like taking bits and pieces. It's not really flowing. It's more like riff salad. But there are some that really do amazing stuff. Like the first band that opened for us tonight was amazing. They have that old school sound. I think they had a really good stage presence. That's a band that I definitely think is going to go somewhere. Actually, was their demo over here? Because I can't pronounce their name. Sempra, I think is how you say it. These guys, amazing. They were really good. And there's stuff like that. And there's a band that I really like out of Chicago called Bear Mace, which I just appeared on their new album doing some vocals. I feel that they really had that old school sound. There's really something about Mark Sugar, who's the guitar player and the singer, that they can write stuff that just has that tinge of old school, even Death style, like the old school Death, like Scream Bloody Gore style, Leprosy style, Death, and then they have their own unique style. So I look for stuff like that. I look for stuff that, not necessarily that sounds like stuff that I did, but it's that sort of aesthetic, that you look for. And if I find a band like that, I really gravitate towards that.
Plus the replica cover art.
Yeah, that too.
From Beyond is now considered as a death metal classic. What do you remember most when you were creating this album?
Well, the songs, believe it or not, even though the album came out in 1991, the songs were started being written in the late of 1985, 86, and 87. That's generally the three, I will say 86 and 87 especially. Those are the core years that music was written. So to think that those songs still resonate today, just like Corpse Grinder. Corpse Grinder was written in Death in 1984. To think that song still resonates today with fans kind of shows you that regardless of all the technical death metal that's out there and all the super blasty death metal and gravity blasting and down-tuned stuff, there's still something that pulls people back to this old style. There's just something about it that just sticks with people. And I think that's really cool.
Do you have then the pressure from the label that they want to make you another Death?
No, I've never got that. Maybe back in the day, Earache, because of the way they're advertised things. And it confuses people too, because people think that Massacre came after Leprosy, which it did in chronological order, but we were together as Massacre before those guys quit and jumped ship to join Chuck in Death. So a lot of people get that confused, and I've seen people say some negatives of, oh, Massacre's just Leprosy 2.0 or something like that. Those are usually narcissists that just want to like downshoot stuff or gaslight people. The truth is, we were around right after I left Death, and Massacre was created in 85. It was actually November of 1985 when I joined. So November of 1985, all of 86, 87 until those guys decided to quit, because they felt that Massacre wasn't going to go anywhere, and Rick took the band, Freddie took the rest of the guys and said, hey, let me go back over here because Chuck just moved back to Florida. Let me just take the band. And Chuck was like, okay, I need band members, this is cool, and the rest is history.
But don't you regret that album wasn't released earlier?
I don't think I regret it. I feel kind of like cheated, not regret, but I feel cheated because those guys quit. And that's kind of like been the history of Massacre the whole time. That's why Massacre's never had solidarity is because anytime you work with those people, they are the type of people that just jump ship. They just have an agenda that's all self-absorbed. And I kept giving these same people the same chances over and over again till I decided, when I came back to Massacre in 2019, I said, you know what? I'm going to be the one that owns the trademark. I'm going to be the one that owns the name. I'm going to be the one that makes the decisions. I tried to work with that same person. That person didn't work. They quit. I worked with some other individuals. They quit. I've never fired anybody. Everybody ends up quitting. Now I have guys that I've had Eldon and Carlos now for 4 years. And Tim is new. He's been in the band for 2 years. And they're solid. I mean, you saw tonight. It's like the most solid band that's, this ever has been. And I've had to do some things with some people that are friends of mine that were, when we did the Resurgence album, we did the Necrolution album, people that came in to help write it. But those people were just recording session guys. These guys have been the band right now for 4 years. So they are the band now.
Have you ever been exhausted with this change in the lineup?
Not really exhausted, no, because actually, to me, you get fresh people coming in, you get fresh ideas. I'm always a person that likes fresh ideas, because I've done so many projects. I've done my bands Bonar and the Grotesquerie, the Skeletal, and Broken Gravestones, and Akatharta, and I've done all these other recording projects because I like to create music, so I like a fresh view on music. A lot of times you get with musicians, especially in a long time, and they become complacent. And because they become complacent, they become not lazy, but they come rather just like, oh, well, I'm just going to make another album. And it becomes like a job. And they don't really have the passion anymore, and they lose the passion. So I like when new blood comes in because they have passion, and they want to prove themselves, and they want to do something. So to me, it's refreshing.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Were there any tracks, the older tracks, which has never been released, or you are going to release them sooner or later? There are some things I wish got better recordings, especially like the Mana stuff. I wish there were better recordings of some of those songs. There's possibility that maybe that could happen. Massacre pretty much has everything as far as old material that's ever been done. But there are a few demo songs that were when Allan West was in the band, before Freddie was in the band, and there's a couple of songs that were written that never got recorded, like Infestation of Death or Perpetual Domination. These are songs that were back in the day. I would really like to redo those at one point. I think it would be kind of for prosperity's sake, not for anything else other than just to do it. Maybe have an extra track on an album or something, just a bonus for the old school fans to go, oh wow, that's cool, they did that. You mentioned Allan West. Tell me why he left. He left you and joined Obituary, or?
Yes, he was in the band first before Freddie was in the band. I had joined, when I joined in '85, it was because of Allan West I joined, because Allan actually came to, I was working in a store, a convenience store. He came in to buy beer. He was underage, and I said, I can't sell this to you. And then we started having a conversation, and he said, I have a band. Would you like to come see us, check us out? And I said, sure, I'll come see. And then I didn't know he was recruiting me at the time, And I went to see him, and then really hung out with them, and then they asked me. They said, hey, would you like to join the band? And I said, well, the first thing is you guys do a lot of thrash, and it's like Anthrax and other bands. I said, I'm not going to do those songs because I don't sing that way. I said, if you're going to want me in the band, we have to be death metal. And it pretty much started that way. Allan was in the band until the point where we had a show coming up. We were supposed to play a show. He wasn't showing up for rehearsal. The drummer didn't like that, so the drummer said, let's get rid of Allan. And I'm like, we have a show in like 3 days. Why are you kicking the guitar player out? He's like, I've had it. I can't do it. I'm like, well, okay. I didn't want to cancel the show. So I got in touch with Freddie, because he's the only guy I knew at the time. We went and picked him up, came, learned the songs really fast, and that was the first show that we ever played.
By the way, do you know what is happening with Allan now?
I think he's still in prison.
It was something with drugs?
Yeah.
Some ex-members claimed that they were the real core of the Massacre. How do you respond to that?
That they were the real, like...
it was the time that you were out of the band.
Okay.
And how was your opinion about their music and their album? I think they released one.
I never really listened to that album because it was like, I had other people come and tell me, you know, their opinion of it, and I trusted those people's opinion because I knew they've been death metal fans for years, and they've been my friends for years. And they're like, oh, you don't really need to listen to it. It's not that good. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to bother listening to it. And then shortly after the band broke up, anyways, I mean, I wasn't even involved in the band broke up. And I remember seeing the articles on Blabbermouth, how they hated each other. You know, they were talking crap about each other. This guy steals, this guy lies. And then, of course, you see, like, now they're working together again. So I don't know how that works. That's worse than marriage to me. Like, it's like getting back with your ex-wife after you've been divorced several times. It's like, I've had enough of that craziness with those individuals. That's why I no longer work with them. I will never work with them again. There will never be a reunion in the future. So if people are like wondering, will I ever do that? Fuck no, that's never gonna happen.
You mentioned that you have rights to the name now.
Yes.
It was hard to get these all rights for you?
It wasn't that hard. It was more or less, there were members that were lying about having the rights. They were completely just lying because they were just like, oh no, you can't do it. We have the rights. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I have a lawyer. You don't. So I had my lawyer look into it. And the thing is, you can't just go and say, oh, well, I decided I want to, you know, use Coca-Cola and I want to trademark it. You can't just go and do it. You have to go and actually go through a process, and it has to go through the courts, and it has to go through a lot of debating, and then the judge has to see it, and after the judge sees it, they have to see how you're going to use the name. So I had to prove in the court of law that I was using the name in commerce, that I was using the Massacre name as a entertainment business. So it wasn't just something that just happens overnight. It took quite a few years and many dollars to do this because of a lot of court fees. And once I started, I'm a person that won't stop until I get what I want, and that's what I did.
By the way, about this album, Back from the Beyond, I was surprised about the name and the cover art. What was your thought when you first
Well,
saw
that's
it?
because Terry stole that idea from me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you been talking with him later?
No. We did a little thing in 2008. We got together because I had another band, Denial Fiend, and he was in that, and we came to tour over here, and it was just supposed to be a one-time thing, just to get over to Europe and tour, and that was all it was supposed to be. It became sort of like this where I was being pressured. Oh, well, you should keep doing this and keep doing it. I'm like, look, we made a deal that we would only go this far. We went up to the Wacken, we played Wacken, and we were supposed to stop. And they kept pressuring me, no, we should do more, And I said, you know what? Sayonara, I'm out of here because I'm not going to do that. I left. On the way out, I basically said, look, if you want to continue Massacre, go find the other guy. And that's what he did. But it took 2 years. Because that was in 2008. It took 2010, I think they got together. They were together 4 years, I believe, did the album, and then broke up themselves. I was not involved in that. And I was totally nowhere to be found.
So good for you.
Yeah.
Album Promise is different from what you play.
Yeah, it's awful. It's
do you
terrible.
Okay, so
It's awful.
What was the idea behind this album?
That is all Freddie's idea. I hated it in the beginning. I remember going in, the only thing they ended up using was a couple of my song titles, which was The Unnameable and one other something, Demon Inside. I can't remember at the time. Unnameable was a song title that I took from H.P. Lovecraft, because of course, Massacre, I've been a Lovecraft fan. They basically cornered me. They had the music already written. And they came to me and they offered me $3,000. They said, hey, we'll pay you $3,000 if you come do the vocals on this. And I'm like, okay, vocals. They played the music for me, and I was like, doesn't sound like Massacre. But they were like, do you want the $3,000? I'm like, yeah, I'll take $3,000. So I went and I was in the studio, and they had a producer at the time, Dana Wolf, and it was in his studio, Wolf Studios. And I remember going in there, and the music was already written, and I remember they're tracking the stuff, and they're like, okay, they give me a yellow, like, notebook pad, handwritten lyrics, and they're like, okay, we want you to go along with this and sing along with this, and I'm like, okay, and I'm reading the lyrics, and I'm going, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely fucking ridiculous. I still did it because, you know, they kept saying, well, you got $3,000, you do it. So I'm doing it and I'm singing it and I'm hating every moment of it. And finally, it's done tracking. I didn't even finish everything. And I just remember walking out to them. They were all in the studio office. And I walked out and I said, this is garbage. This is absolutely fucking garbage. I quit. I'm out. And I left. I quit. It took them 2 more years to put the album out. A lot of people say there's vocals on it, don't sound like you. I'm like, yeah, because it's not me. They got some other vocalist called Kenny Goodwin to come in and sing it. And if you look on the inside of the CD, it literally says Kenny Goodwin is now the new vocalist for Massacre. But they try to pull it off because Eric didn't want to lose any money. They're like, oh shit, we got to say it's Kam Lee. You know, so they took my scratch tracks, my vocals that I went in there and just was reading off the lyric sheet, and they used it. Yeah, they used it. And they said, well, we gave you $3,000. That's why we used it.
So, have you ever been talking with them years later? What they think about this album?
Yeah, it was absolutely shit. It was Our Cold Lake.
But they think now the same, yeah?
I guess so. Yeah, I would think so.
As far, Necrolution is your latest album. So, do you have new ideas, new tracks? How does it look like now?
Yeah, we have actually new tracks now written with this lineup that we're going to be coming out with a single, because I love putting out singles because I love old school stuff and I love 7 inches. And we have a new single that should be coming out this year on Halloween with 2 brand new tracks that were written by Carlos and Tim.
Can you say about the title or?
It's currently probably going to be called Samhain, the Curse of Halloween.
Oh.
Yeah. It's based on the movie Halloween.
Okay. Yeah. This album got mixed opinions. How do you judge this album now after 4 years?
The Necrolution or Resurgence?
Necrolution.
Resurgence. Okay. I still like it. I think it's a perfect follow-up for me, you know, lyrically and aesthetically from Beyond, because it took my ideas of From Beyond, which were very Lovecraftian, and it just expanded it. So I'm happy with Resurgence. I'm happy with Necrolution. I mean, Necrolution was purposely a rewind. That's why it's called Necrolution, because I was like, that's the last thing I remember. I wanted to do something that was kind of an evolution, but dissolving back to the older stuff. And that was the purpose of Necrolution. Oh, okay. It wasn't meant to be a next phase of Resurgence. It was supposed to sound like something that was written in the late 80s and early 90s. Like an really old school. That was the purpose for it.
Horror is the main theme which you use in your lyrics. And as you said a few times now, the Lovecraft is the king of the horror. Do you have his favorite novels?
Yeah, I have everything from Lovecraft.
Which one are the best for you?
For me, I like his short stories better than his full-length novellas or novels. My favorite, because it was the first one I read, and the first one that I really gravitated to, was called The Outsider. Oh. I like that one a lot. There's some weird ones that are kind of like offshoot ones, like I love the Randolph Carter stuff, like the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, and I really like the Case of Charles Dexter Ward. I like that whole thing. There's this one short story I was actually just telling the guys about. There's one called Cold Fear. I love that story because it's literally in the 1920s when he was alive, in the early 1900s. You could tell of course they didn't have air conditioning. If you read this story, it's literally the fear of air conditioning. It's like, that's so cool that he was actually afraid of air conditioning, that he wrote a story about it. And I always thought that was really cool. It was really unique. And I think that's what I like about Lovecraft, because Lovecraft took weird things that you would think would have a fear factor to it, and he would add that fear factor to it, like air conditioning or just, being ostracized. And he probably wrote from his own fears of being ostracized and feeling like an outsider. And yes, I know people say he was a racist, and you got to think, well, there was the time, it was the 1920s. He wasn't very well exposed to anybody until he moved to New York. And then when he was in New York, it was overwhelming to him. So he wanted to go back to Providence, Rhode Island, which he knew as a child. Plus, his dad went insane and was in an insane asylum. His mom and his aunt coddled him since he was a child, and he was a very sickly child, so he wasn't allowed to go out much and really have friends. So he was a weirdo. And he died of cancer, all alone in an attic.
In pop culture, there are many movies, cartoons, etc., connected with Lovecraft. Do you have your favorite movies or?
Oh, of course, yeah. I love and we wrote about that on Necrolution, or I did. I love the Stuart Gordon films, the ones that came out in the 80s. So there's The Reanimator, it's the first one. And then From Beyond, of course. And then he did one called Castle Freak, which we have a song called Shriek of the Castle Freak. So I like those the most. I really like the Stuart Gordon. Even though the Stuart Gordon, they're just loosely based on Lovecraft or not directly based on Lovecraft, because Stuart had to take it and kind of make it modern for the 80s, because since it was so written back in the time. But my favorite thing that he did, and was one of the very last things he did before he died, was he worked on the series called Master of Horrors. And he did a Lovecraft story which was called the Dreams in the Witch House. And that's actually one of my favorite things that he did. So, and that's actually one of my favorite Lovecraft stories as well, The Dreams in the Witch House, because that's, again, Lovecraft taking something that's just generally normal, geometry, and just making it so horrifying. To him, in The Dreams in the Witch House, there's this geometric corner in this house, that just doesn't work, and the narrator's looking at it and goes, this doesn't quite work, and it ends up being a portal to another world where a witch comes out. So.
By the way, what do you think about this version of Call of Cthulhu, this modern movie made from 20s? You saw it?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was just it had that aesthetic, black and white kind of thing. And, they had a very small budget, so they did what they could, but they generally stuck to the story, which was cool. I like Call of Cthulhu, but my favorite part of it is the part with the detective. When that's because it's basically broken up in 3 different stories, 3 different perspectives. And the first was starting off with the collector, the guy that has the statue, and then he dies on the steps. And then it goes into the detective story. I really like the detective story. The sailor part at the end, it's just kind of it gets weird. And then, of course, Cthulhu comes out of the thing and they ram him with a boat. And I was like, okay, but I do like that story. It's one of the most well-known ones, but it's not my favorite. I guess the biggest one biggest story and I think is great is At the Mountains of Madness. That's untouchable. Because look how many people have tried to make movies out of it. They just can't do it because it's so vast.
I know that they were trying.
They were trying. Guillermo del Toro wants to do it, but I think the budget, because it's got to be humongous. But maybe nowadays with more CGI and AI, maybe they can start to do it with a lesser budget. But I think he wanted to do it on the scale Lords of the Rings, Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings, and people aren't going to be that interested in that as they are Lord of the Rings.
Do you like any other horror writers, I don't know, Stephen King?
Oh, of course, yeah. I like Stephen King. There's Jack Keachum that I like. He does more modern horror. There's a couple other guys that are modern. There's some really good female writers right now that are doing female horror, and it's really cool to see a female's take on it, because it's been such a male, dominant kind of thing. But it's kind of cool to see these women writing horror now, and you get this different perspective of it, and it's frightening because you get this. It's not so visceral so much like a man writes things. It's more psychological, so I like that.
You write lyrics. Have you ever been thinking about writing a book or a novel?
Actually, I did, and that was The Grotesquerie.
Oh.
I wrote the novel first of The Grotesquerie, especially the first one, and I was trying to finish it, and I didn't quite finish it, and I've been sitting on it for almost 5 years. The idea I had for almost a decade, and I was sitting on this unfinished work. And I remember when Rogo Johansson came to me and said, I want to do this story that I really want to do a Lovecraft thing, but I want to make it original. What do you have ideas for? And I told him about this novel I was working on. He said, man, you should turn that into an album. And we did. That's what we did.
So maybe next time the album with the book.
Something like that, yeah.
Over decades, your lyrics have dealt with death, evil, and cosmic horror, as we said. How have your personal views on death and mortality changed since these early days?
It's kind of weird. I don't believe in an afterlife, so I'm atheist, and I know that shocks people. And they're like, well, what's the Lovecraft thing? I was like, well, for me, Lovecraft is more entertainment and it's fun. It's a really cool way for me to express sort of my misanthropy, because I admit I'm a misanthrope. I look at mankind and it disgusts me, just like it disgusts Lovecraft, and the reason it disgusts me isn't like in a way that you're disgusted by something that's gross or something. It disgusts me because I look at mankind and I go, fuck, we could do better. Why are we so selfish? Why are we so stupid? Why do we do the stupid things that we do? And it's all for selfish reasons. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand, man. I don't understand simple musicians that get, self-absorbed and want to do and just do things. And it's just like, man, we're just making music. Just like you said earlier before the interview, you said, you see that I don't hide in a dressing room, and I don't I go out with the fans, because I never believed in that rock and roll bullshit. I think I'm just a guy that likes to do music, and I'm lucky to do music that people like. And I don't think of myself as any higher or any better.
Before we end, tell me in few words about your other projects. I mean, Bone Gnawer,
Yeah.
Broken Gravestones, Grave Walks, The Skeletor, and others. I mean, new music is going, or concerts. What are the plans?
Actually, all that stuff was never meant to be played live. It was all it was just downtime that I took, and I said, I still want to do music, but I don't necessarily want to go out and play live. And then I found out there was a lot of different musicians around the world that were doing, because we were getting to this modern age where everyone had a computer, everyone was to be able to communicate with each other. They were file sharing, and I said, I want to still do music, but I still want to be able to just kind of stay home. And I found out there was all these guys telling me, you should talk to this guy. This guy does all these bands, and he just does it for fun, and he does it just to make recording projects. And I started meeting all these people that kind of live in this recording project world around the world, and they were all doing death metal. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool, especially Swedish guys like Roger Johansson and Johnny Pedersen. And I'm like, these guys are doing the stuff that I love, and they're not necessarily having to make it a big rock and roll kind of thing. They're just making music. And I'm like, finally I meet people through the internet that just think like me. They're not out to get glorious fame and be on stage. They just want to make music. So when I met Roga and I met people like this, and that's what they wanted to do, it's just started to click, and it just started to happen, and it was fun again. What happened was, when I was in Massacre in the beginning, when I was in Mantis and all that, it was fun until it didn't become fun. After Promise, I was like, this is not fun anymore, and I quit. And I was away for 10 years. From 1994 to 2004, I stayed away from it.
So what you were doing then? Just working?
Just working. I tried to become a comic book artist. I moved from Florida to Phoenix, Arizona. I tried to get into the comic book art field until I realized I was horrible. I even showed stuff to Danzig, and he said, yeah, it's okay, but your perspective sucks.
You were drawing?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I said, okay, and I tried to go out, and I did work on a couple of small things, small projects. I did covers, and I did artwork that was like in pinups and stuff. And then I was like, this is harder to get into than music. So I was like, let's move back to Florida. And I moved back to Florida and still worked. I became an electrician, so I went to school for that. And then my wife was just like, you really should get back into music again. And it started with the music projects. Like Bonar was the first thing I did. Well, I did Denial Fiend at first. Went and tried that, and that was in 2005 and 2006. 2007 came around, I quit the band again because of individuals that I worked with before that was horrible. So I was like, I quit that band, and then my wife's like, you shouldn't stop. And I was talking to Roger Johansson at the time, and we started with Bonar. So Bonar was the first thing I did. Then we did the Grotesquerie, then the Skeletal. Broken Gravestones came after that, and then I just started reaching out to other people until I had all these projects that were just fun to do again. It was fun, and I was feeling this is fun. And I got the fire back. And it led me up to finally getting back to Massacre, because their version of Massacre died. And I remember somebody saying, hey, maybe you should try to do it. And at the time, Freddie and was with other guys, and they were doing a band called The End. And they came and asked me, they said, hey, we do some Massacre songs. Do you want to come sing them live? And I said, okay, sure, I'll try it, see how it goes. And from then on, it was a roller coaster ride till it is now.
But all these projects are OSDM.
Yes.
Have you ever been thinking about playing something totally different? I don't know, rock?
Well,
metal,
I've done a couple of side projects. I've done a couple of things on my own, like the Kam Lee project. I've done some death metal in it. I've done some more kind of like, I would say, rock, more like Danzig, because Danzig's a big thing, influence of mine, so is the Misfits. So it has sort of a Misfits punk rock feel. I did a project that was called Lullabies for Demented Children, and it's all just like surf rock, Wow. So yeah, I've done a couple of side projects like that.
I think this is opening mind.
Yeah.
So, thank you for your time, and last words for fans.
Well, I mean, I guess just, I appreciate everything. I appreciate fans today. I appreciate fans that still like to hear what I do, that fans that are still out there that support me. Then that means a lot, because there's so many haters, so it's good to have the fans out there, because, I've got so many enemies that are trying to do their smear campaigns and all this other stuff, and narcissists love to gaslight and make me out to be a villain. I'm fine with being a villain. That's all death metal's about. If I'm somebody Satan, that's great. That's all I'm thinking. But, it's good to have those fans out there to support. And the fans that I think, like you said, they see I don't hide. I go out and I talk to them, and I mingle with them, and I meet them, and I sign stuff, and I don't charge. I'm not one of those assholes that charge for, $50 for their signature or stuff like that. I do it for free. If that's what fans want, that's great. I don't think my signature means anything personally, but if that's what a fan wants, I have no problem doing it, and I enjoy doing it.
Thank you. I almost forgot. Your name, Lee, do you have any roots in Asia?
Actually, I do. My name Lee comes from, my father was adopted by his stepfather, came from China, and his name was Lee. My dad is Hawaiian Filipino, but was adopted by a Chinese man when he was little. So that's where the name comes from. But my roots are in Hawaii and the Philippines. So that's where my people come from. But also my mother is mixed with Irish and Japanese. So I have an Irish Japanese mom, and I have a Hawaiian Filipino dad.
Okay.
Yeah. With a last name of Chinese last name.
Thank you again.
Okay.